Hello everyone, it's Dick here. Today I'll be talking about my new-to-me 2017 Honda Grom, or MSX 125, depending on your jurisdiction. The Grom is a fuel-injected 124.9cc air-cooled single-cylinder 4-stroke engine. It has a 4-speed transmission. It has a 760mm or 29.9-inch seat height. It has 12-inch wheels, 31mm upside-down suspension up front, a rear monoshock mounted to a steel square pipe swing arm. It has a single 220mm disc with hydraulic dual-piston caliper brake up front and a 190mm disc with hydraulic single-piston caliper at the rear. It weighs 104 kilograms or 229 pounds and has a 5.7 liter or 1.25 gallon fuel tank, which boasts an average of 109.43 miles per gallon. Mine is lemon yellow ice. I've wanted a Grom like this for a very long time. Let's take a closer look and see why.
So for some reason, the previous owner had put a tail tidy on this. I assume because they only ride, or they only thought they'd ride in dry weather. But what you can see is even with the enormous UK wind sail that is a license plate here, the wheel just sticks out that much further and sends a rooster tail up and over onto the back of the seat and onto my back. So I'm going to be looking into some sort of fender. I don't know if I can put the original one back on because usually fender deletes cut something or do some bullshit with wiring that make it difficult to put it back on, but I'm going to be looking at that. Coincidentally enough, he put a fender extender to keep the shit off of the engine, but not the shit off of him. And now, not the shit off of me. This is it's not a low seat height. I'd say it's probably 28 inches, 29, 30 inches seat height. So it's taller than the Indian. It's probably about as tall as the Street Cup. Both feet are flat on the ground. My arms got a nice bend, reach to the handlebars. Geometry-wise, or proportionately, it feels like a full-size motorcycle. All the other proportions have been adjusted and modified to make sure that it is in a more compact package. Big surprise, the Grom can filter.
Hey everybody, it's Dick here. I'm on my new 2017 Honda Grom. Yeah, I know. It's not Father's Day, but it is Christmas. And Fanny surprised me with a new bike. I've been looking at another mini moto for down in London because of how much I love the CT125. I've really come around to these Honda mini motos, and I was actually looking at a Dax. I thought the Monkey for a while, but the Monkey's a bit too heavy for me. The Dax seemed a bit streamlined and a bit more interesting to me, and it shares the transmission with the CT125, so it wouldn't be that much of a learning curve since I'm picking up on how to ride the CT125. But I've always had my eye on a Grom. I've always had my eye on this Grom in particular, this high-vis yellow Grom. I'll tell you why. I think it was 2012, 2013 where I first saw the first Grom, or news of it or something, and I wasn't too convinced by the headlamp, a couple of the design features. There was something about it being relevant.
Let's get a little gas in this puppy. Huh. 2.8 liters, 4.79 quid. And it says it's full. Anyway, where was I?
Now, the Cub's been around for a while, and right around the time that the Grom was introduced, they had reintroduced the Super Cub, an updated Cub version. Small displacement was coming to the west again. Cub's never been off the assembly line, but the Super Cub was a big redesign, and the Cub is a scooter. So unlike the Dax and the Monkey, the Grom was a new, or a reimagining of the Mini Moto. It was a Mini Moto for our times. Now, in the ensuing years, the Heritage design popularity blossomed with Triumph and Royal Enfield's resurgence, and Honda, with their full-size motorcycles, really never went full retro with their full-size motorcycles, except maybe for, I think there was like an 1100 or something, the CB 1100 or something that came out for a while that kind of looked relatively retro. But most of it was this neo-retro stuff. The real only pure retro offerings are the Monkey and the Dax. My feelings towards heritage designs and motorcycles, I think, are plain and clear, and if you haven't watched this channel before, you'll just know that I'm a bit suspect about them. I'm a bit suspect about relying on heritage design to sell motorcycles. When I saw the Grom it has a look of the kind of CB 500F about it. It's a kind of a sporty, sharp-angled type thing. The early ones had a round or ovalish melted jelly bean headlamp. This version, now I don't know if this is the second version or if there's like if this is a 2.5 version, but this version, the 2017 version, has a really cool kind of bifurcated headlamp. These two kind of horizontal slits. Oh, by the way, I'm going 58 miles an hour out here on this A road. 58, 59 miles an hour. I mean, I'm keeping up with all but the national speed limit traffic. The Grom kind of caught my eye because it was looking back on what Honda has done traditionally, but then saying, how can we bring that forward to now? And I think the Grom is about now. If you go online and do any searching on the Grom, it has a cult subculture now for 20-something-year-old wannabe hooligans. Mostly it's in America. And they want to be into motorcycling, but they don't want to be motorcyclists like their dads. They don't want to be Harley riders. They don't want to be douches. I mean, they're douches in their own way, in their own right, and their riding is reckless. But the Grom has sold, I think, probably hundreds of thousands of units worldwide. And in America, it's this cultish subculture of wheelie endoing stunt riders. That's not what's drawn me to the Grom. If anything, that kind of repelled me from getting one for as long as I have. After this generation, the Grom went back to its kind of melted jelly bean headlamp and some weird, quirky, I call it internet design. This kind of weird web designy, big chunky shapes and contrasting colors, and again, that's about the now that we're in. It's about reflecting on design language that's about now. But this one here, the 2017 model, I think it goes from like 2014 to 2020 maybe. This one was really the sweet spot for me. One, because of the high-vis color, and two, because of that headlamp. I've always kept my eyes open for one of these high-vis versions, but here in the UK, because of CBT laws, because of licensing laws, the compulsory bike training that allows you to ride a 125 for 2 years before retesting, the 125s hold their value unusually well. 125s have this magic of retaining value that 250s, 350s, 400s don't have. And so there's been a kind of basement price for Groms, right around $3.5 grand. They've all been either modified or treated like shit by those hooligan little shits. And so you can't find a good version. You know, you always hear of that magical, I bought it for my wife, she rode it a couple times, and then it lived in the shed. The old lady only drove the Buick to get gas in the grocery store for the last 40 years. It's a 40-year-old Buick, and it's got 400 miles on it, and it's showroom condition. You always hear of that cherry of a vehicle. And somehow, in my, I'd say monthly or bi-monthly search on the various sales portals, I found the wife's Grom. It's got 1,000 miles on it. It's a 2017, one owner, and it's showroom. There's a couple of weird things on it. They've put Renthal bars, or a gold bar with a Renthal sticker, a fender delete, some really useless low-profile turn signals at the front, which I'm probably going to change for something that's more effective. But other than that, completely stock. This bike was waiting for me, or we had been sharing a parallel existence until our paths converged. Now, I wouldn't have bought it in 2017 because they're $4 grand. New, they're $4 grand. And a Dax is $4 grand. I was seeing some from Buyer's Remorse bikes, old guys who bought them because they had, or their dad had one and threw it in the trunk of the car or something like that, and they had like 1,000 miles on them. But those were like 37. They're trying to recoup. They understand they can't sell it for the same price as new, but they're trying to recoup as much as they got on the amount they paid for it, because they know they're never going to ride it because it's way too small. They can't see the mirrors, and they probably can't get their knees that high because they're so fucking fat. I can hardly get my knees as high to get on this thing. I managed to squeak this one out for just over $2,000, which was a very unusually low price. Now, old bikes with low mileage, they're usually something to look a bit closer at, have a bit more scrutiny with, but this made the cut. I picked it up for a song of a deal in excellent condition. Well, I said I was bowled over by the CT125, and I am. And riding the CT125 is very different than riding this bike. I understand why if you get a wife's bike. I bought it for my wife and she never rode it. Oh God. I can understand why new riders probably are a bit disconcerted on the Grom as opposed to the Monkey or maybe even the Dax and definitely the CT and the Cub, because the Grom takes a little faith. You can't see anything. You have to look down. You have to look down to see anything. Even the mirrors, you have to take your eyes off the road. You can't glance out of the side of your eye to see the mirrors. And you're kind of locked into the seat. It's sloped forward because it's a bit sporty. And on this version, there's a lip to the seat for a little lumbar support, but that actually forces you forward. As a new motorcyclist, you have to look at your controls, you have to find your... And on a Honda, this fucking thing, I always think this is the turn signals, and it's the fucking horn. So I'm always pushing that to turn, and I'm upsetting the people in front of me because they think I'm being anxious or I'm being impatient. As a new rider, I could see this being disconcerting because you're not learning about your motorcycle. You're kind of going on faith. It's kind of like, it's like you're wearing blinders and oven mitts and you've been told to do some fine motor activity. So I can understand why new riders or, the wives wouldn't want to ride this little Grom, because it does take a bit of getting used to. The geometry is very close to a real motorcycle. My knees are a little bit higher than they would be on, say, the Street Cup, which is a sportier stance from all of my other bikes. I think of all the mini motos, it's the most authentic, save for the Cub. But even the Super Cub is a bit more kind of neo-retro. I think the Grom is probably the most authentic of all the mini motos, unless you get an actual mini moto from the 60s and the 70s. And that's why I'm drawn to it. That's why I've been always looking for a high-vis version in a price range that I was comfortable paying. For $4,000, you can buy a full-size motorcycle and be quite happy. So if you're going for the Grom, you either need a 125 and you like the quirk. The quirk is what sold you on it. The quirk is part of what sold me on it. The compactness of it sold me on it. For such a small bike, it's not very easy to move around. There's no grab rails or anything on the back. I gotta find some version of a grab rail. This could be a bit unsettling for even experienced riders. I mean, when I first got on it again, after so many years of not riding one, I was swinging my head around. I was looking in the mirrors. I realized that even the mirrors aren't very effective. Looking over my shoulder, checking my blind spots, I was brought back to that kind of squirrely energy of a new rider, which is important because you feel very exposed on this thing. You feel very vulnerable on this thing, and I think it's as vulnerable or as exposed as on any other bike. But those bikes give you a false sense of security because of their mass around you or under you. The sensation you get on the Grom is probably the most realistic sense of vulnerability that you have on all motorcycles. What's nice about Honda being such a big company and being as diversified as they are is that this bike, although it's, let's say it's entry level, has a lot of the trickle-down technology from bikes higher up in the range. That's the same display that you would have gotten on that year's CB500s. Mirrors are the same, controls are the same, the headstock's the same, the filler cap's the same. All of this stuff is trickled down. They're not going to reinvent the wheel for something low on the totem pole. I'm aware that these tires are old, old, so they might be a little firm. And I am aware that these tires have not been reviewed very highly. They're not very respected in terms of the types of alternatives that are available for this thing. So I'm taking it easy on these slick, cold roads. It's about 3 degrees centigrade at the moment. So I've been on it for about an hour, and I've noticed that my bum is getting a little numb. The seat kind of locks you into place, and you can't really slide forward or back. Well, there's nowhere to go forward, and you can't really slide back all that much. And it's right on my haunches. The same part of my ass is taking a pounding for the last hour. I mean, I do go on sustained rides on all my bikes, but you know, a couple of hours, put up with a little punishment. You would think a little bike like this would be buzzy. The vibrations are noticeable, but they're not unreasonable in any respect. They're really quite manageable, and actually the vibration that's present is reassuring. It reminds you that the bike is there, because really there's no evidence in your sight line. Oh God! Oh, I need a fender. Oh my God, eBay, here I come. It just went down my collar. Oh, it just went down my collar. It hit the back of my helmet and went down my collar. I wasn't even going that fast. I was going slow. I was creeping through it and just spit up under my collar. Ah, gross. God, I hate fender eliminators.
Oh man, I can't imagine what my back looks like. Look at all the gravel. I need a fender, man. So this is the state of my jacket after my ride without a fender in the winter. All the way up to my collar.
If you like that video and you want to see more like them, hit like, share, and subscribe.